Pentagon and previously at the CIA, and former NBC News Tel Aviv bureau chief, veteran Israeli correspondent Martin Fletcher. It's so good to have you both. Jeremy, let me ask you about the troop buildup. The 360,000 reserves that were called into duty, so many of them on the southern border. Israel has enough forces to also patrol the northern border, but so far the assumption has been that Hezbollah will not become fully engaged. I should point out that the Iranian foreign minister was just in Beirut meeting with Hezbollah leaders just in the last few days.
Yeah, Andrea, I don't know that we know at this hour whether or not Hezbollah has made the decision to become engaged or not. They may want to wait and see how the ground invasion of Gaza unfolds. They may be a reserve force for the Iranians because, of course, they serve as Iran's proxy. But I think looking at Israel's various borders, one of the key lessons out of this whole situation is, of course, the land for peace bargain has failed. I mean, Israel obviously withdrew from Gaza in 2005. And essentially, they've gotten rocket attacks every other year, and now this horrific terrorist invasion of their own country, the slaughter of their own civilians. But also in the north, I think it's important to note that Israel withdrew. They had been up towards the Litani River after the 1982 Lebanon war. They withdrew back down to the previous borderline, and Hezbollah has moved in, and they obviously have 200,000 rocket pieces. So, you know, the long-term strategic issue facing Israel and the Palestinians is really this intractable situation, which is if Israel were to contemplate further territorial compromise or withdrawal from the West Bank, which is, of course, where most Palestinians live, I think the Israeli people will be so concerned that they'd be yielding ground to terrorists that I think, for the time being, that's a non-starter.
And, Martin, you have seen this before for over decades in Israel, in the region. But this is different. The Hamas attack was proportionally different. It has reached the soul, the fiber of the Israeli people, the failure of their military for the first time, failing, and being caught by surprise. Talk to me about the resolve that Israel has for this ground invasion and the very explicit caution from Tony Blinken again today, as he did in Tel Aviv yesterday, to be careful as much as they can, while fully embracing the need to respond, to be careful about trying to limit civilian casualties.
I think Israel obviously wants to limit civilian casualties as much as they can, but in this case, probably they can't, and that's the bottom line. Israel, as a result of this extraordinarily atrocious attack on their citizens in their homes on Saturday and the next day, as a result of that, Israelis are feeling vulnerable. They're feeling, there's a sense of, we thought the Holocaust was over. This is the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. In one day, it's rather extraordinary how many people were killed, how defenseless the victims felt, how they called for help from their own army, which didn't arrive in some cases for as much as 8, 9, 10 hours. So the idea that terrorists could just wander around their homes and pull people out of their beds and kill them and shoot babies in their beds, this is something that has completely changed the psyche of Israel overnight. And so I think the Israelis are united. They feel the need. This is it. They've got to take out Hamas. Now, what that really means in practice, we don't know, because the ground invasion, destroying Hamas, if they could even do that. OK, so what next? Israel got out of Gaza in 2006 because they didn't want to be there. They couldn't really handle it. They don't want to go there again. So this is an extraordinarily sensitive time for Israel. They're very conscious of the fact that this wasn't an attack only against Israel. It was an attack against all Jews. The call from Hamas has already gone out, strike Jews anywhere in the world. So it's not only about Israel. It's about the Jews, and it always has been. And let me just add one thing, if I may, about the question of Hezbollah in Lebanon, Andrea.
Please.
For Israel, Hezbollah equals Lebanon. We're talking about Hezbollah, a very strong paramilitary group that is backed by and financed and armed and trained by Iran, a proxy army for Iran. But they're more than that. Hezbollah is part of the government of Lebanon. There's a big Hezbollah influence in the army of Lebanon. So if Israel strikes Hezbollah, they're striking Lebanon. They've already said many times that if Hezbollah goes to war with Israel, then Lebanon will take the brunt of the response. So it's this is not only about Israel and a paramilitary force. It's about Israel and another neighbor, Lebanon.
And in fact, there are Hezbollah parliamentarians in Lebanon. They are fully in the fabric of the government there. That's such a good point. Jeremy, we now know from the White House that President Biden today has spoken to the 14 American families of those who are still not accounted for. He met with them as well as with State Department official and Jake Sullivan, of course, his national security advisor. Similarly to the in-person meeting that Secretary Blinken had yesterday with some families. The president also earlier spoke to 60 Minutes to Scott Pelley about why he wanted to talk to these families.
Why do you feel so strongly about speaking to these families personally on Zoom?
Because I think they have to know that the President of the United States of America cares deeply about what's happened to them. Deeply. We have to communicate to the world this is critical. This is not even human behavior. It's pure barbarism. And we're going to do everything in our power to get them home if we can find them.
That is Joe Biden. That is the essence of Joe Biden. And I should add also Tony Blinken in the extraordinary meetings he held yesterday, Jeremy. That has made a difference. The Israelis I talked to say that when they saw the president's speech the other night, when they saw Tony Blinken's yesterday, some of them, including officials, were in tears.
Yeah, the statements, the moral clarity really from the president and from our Secretary of State has been striking at this hour. And it's precisely what the Israeli people need. They needed to be consoled. And there are now billboards in Tel Aviv saying, thank you, Joe Biden. And it's really because Joe Biden has a 50-year history of working on the Middle East and a 50-year history of standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel. Also, Secretary Blinken has his own personal history, had parents, grandparents who survived pogroms, the Holocaust, and he stood there, as he told Bibi Netanyahu, he stands there not just as an American Secretary of State, but as a Jew. And you can really feel the emotion coming from American officials. Everybody I've talked to have been personally, emotionally moved, and they want to help Israel. But to Martin's point, Israel does not have terrific military options in clearing Gaza. They don't want to occupy Gaza for a permanent status. They want to go block to block, street by street, take out HVTs, take out Hamas leadership, take out command and control nodes, take out the weapons and rocket factories and the weapons caches, and they want to make the southern part of Israel more safe. And I think the Arab countries are going to have to step up, take refugees from Gaza ultimately, and provide a humanitarian corridor for them so that Israel can conduct these clearing operations as any country would.
Something Egypt right now is refusing to do. Martin, you have a unique perspective also from all of your decades there as to why Arab countries have not come to the defense of Palestinians and have, in many regards, ignored them for decades. And share with us your wisdom about that.
Well, the Arab states pay lip service to the Palestinian cause and say there can't be progress in this field or that field until there's peace with the Palestinians. But as you say, there's not many Arab countries right now stepping up to the Palestinians saying, hey, come here, we'll keep you safe. In fact, guess what? Zero. So part of the problem, part of the history of the Palestinians with the Arab nations is that wherever the Palestinians have gone, frankly, they brought instability. They went into Lebanon. They created a state within a state in southern Lebanon that Lebanese rejected and hated, and in the end, they were part of the civil war in Lebanon. Then when the Palestinians went into Jordan, there was a civil war again in 1970 between the Palestinians and the government of Jordan. So, and then when the Palestinians, as they've gone to work in the Gulf states, they've been focused on improving their lives, but they've always supported the Palestinian cause. So they brought instability, frankly, wherever they've gone. And I haven't found a polite way to say this, but most Arab states don't like the Palestinians. The Palestinian street, the famous Palestinian street, is always in favor of the Palestinians, demonstrating in favor of the Palestinians. And today, the day of what they call the day of rage, the day of anger that Hamas called for around the world, it was mostly in the Arab states that people came out in support of the Palestinians. But the governments, the reality is, they're not giving them money, they're not giving them food or medicine, they're not giving them shelter. The only people giving them anything is the government of Qatar, which gives the Palestinians in Gaza $10 million a month. And that's because Israel wants them to do that in order to create some kind of stability. But that didn't work, did it?